Sergeant Leo Brandt moved through the ruined sector of the city with the deliberate, low profile of a man who understood the language of rubble. The air was a mixture of pulverized concrete, stale smoke, and the metallic scent of spilled oil. His mission was simple and brutal. Secure a single civilian medic trapped in the collapsed district, a task assigned because his specialized unit possessed the highest level of close-quarters endurance training. He was alone, his radio silent due to heavy interference, relying solely on his compass, map, and the internal rhythm of his survival programming. 48 hours without sleep had eroded his physical reserves, leaving him running on a cold, steady current of professional commitment. The fatigue was a lead weight in his stomach, but his discipline was the lever that allowed him to move it.
The emotional toll of the ruin was the first obstacle. The sheer scale of the destruction, the tilted buildings, the exposed internal structures, the silence where a vibrant city once stood threatened to overwhelm his focus with morbid reflection. Leo aggressively countered this with immediate technical observation. Every piece of debris was analyzed for instability, every shadow for potential enemy placement. He transformed the tragic landscape into a purely tactical environment, stripping it of its emotional weight. This cognitive restructuring was an act of profound mental discipline. He was not a witness, he was an operative, and sentiment was a vulnerability he could not afford. His mind became a cold, relentless calculator, working only with angles, vectors, and probabilities.
He encountered a tight, choked alleyway, blocked by a cascade of fallen masonry. It was a guaranteed choke point, a perfect place for an ambush. The quick, reckless option was to climb over the debris, exposing his silhouette against the skyline. The disciplined option was to spend the necessary 5 minutes clearing a low crawl path through the base of the rubble, sacrificing speed for security. Leo chose the latter. The physical labor of moving the heavy, sharp-edged stones taxed his already depleted energy, but he worked with a controlled, rhythmic efficiency, refusing to let the strain compromise his focus on the perimeter. The disciplined choice is always the one that demands the highest tax on the self for the lowest risk to the mission. A sniper round impacted a steel beam above his head, the sound a deafening metallic gong that echoed through the empty streets. Leo immediately dropped, rolling behind a shattered concrete slab, his rifle up and searching. The shot was an acknowledgement of his presence, a threat demanding immediate respect. He resisted the instinct to move or fire a panic-suppressive round. He needed to find the source. He stabilized his breathing, forced his heart rate down, and began a patient, methodical scan of the upper levels of the surrounding buildings. The pain in his strained shoulder was now intense, a sharp, white intrusion, but he used it as an anchor, focusing on the pain to sharpen his awareness. He located the shooter, a small, dark silhouette high in the 10th story of a partially collapsed tower, the glint of the optic barely visible. Too far for a guaranteed shot with his current rifle and too exposed to move openly. Leo ran the calculus. To engage was to expose, but to wait was to remain pinned. He chose a third option, tactical pressure. He fired 3 rounds, not at the sniper, but at the window frame, shattering your remaining glass and forcing the shooter to shift his position or risk falling debris. It was a purely defensive, psychological action designed to disrupt the enemy's certainty and buy him time to implement his egress plan. He began his movement utilizing the stop-and-start method, moving low and fast between pockets of deep cover, timing his sprint to the sniper's reload or observation cadence. Every sprint was a brutal, full-body exertion, leaving him gasping for air, the exhaustion a suffocating blanket. He focused on the simple, absolute requirement of reaching the next piece of cover.
He was filtering out the terrifying totality of the journey, reducing his existence to the single necessary act of forward motion. He would not allow the anticipation of the pain to dictate his movement.
His leg caught on a piece of twisted rebar, tearing his uniform and scraping his skin. He felt the blood well up, but he didn't stop, continuing the sprint to the cover of a massive, overturned bus. Once secure, he performed the damage assessment. The wound was shallow but bleeding steadily. He applied a quick, tight-pressure bandage, the action purely mechanical, his eyes constantly scanning the street for the sniper's next shot. He was his own triage officer, assigning a low priority to his body's complaints. The mission was the only constant, the only mandate.
He reached the edge of the collapse zone, the coordinates matching the medic's last known location. He sent a single coded burst on his short-range radio, a signal that he had arrived. He received no response. He knew the medic was likely trapped and unable to communicate. The silence was heavy, demanding immediate action. He refused the urge to rush into the rubble. Discipline dictated reconnaissance first. He spent 5 critical minutes observing the collapsed structure, listening for any sign of life, focusing on the subtle sounds of settling debris. His training taught him that patience saves lives, both his own and the target's.
He heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping deep within the debris, a sound almost swallowed by the ambient silence. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps, the universal distress signal. The sound was fragile, but it was a mandate. Leo began the excavation. The work was slow, agonizing, requiring him to shift heavy, unstable sections of concrete and wood without causing a secondary collapse. He was fighting the sheer weight of the ruin, his muscles trembling from fatigue and the unrelenting tension of the tactical environment. He worked with his face inches from the debris, listening for any shift in the rubble, prioritizing safety over speed.
The sheer physical labor pushed him past the point of exhaustion and into a state of physical delirium. His body was protesting violently, his vision blurring. He fought the loss of control by focusing on the mantra of his unit. Honor is measured not by the height of the victory, but by the depth of the commitment to the broken ground. He was committed to this broken, ugly piece of earth and the life trapped beneath it. He was moving concrete not with strength, but with a sheer, sustained force of will, treating the act of labor as an operational necessity, a non-negotiable step in the mission sequence.
He finally cleared a small opening, wide enough to access the trapped space. He saw the medic, Dr. Alara Chen, a woman in a mud-stained uniform, her face pale but her eyes clear and determined, pressed against a fallen beam. She was trapped by a massive section of reinforced wall that had twisted under its own weight. She was conscious and injured, but critically, she was calm. Her own discipline was a testament to the core strength required to survive this environment. Leo felt a surge of professional respect, the quiet understanding shared between 2 disciplined professionals in extremis.
The medic spoke first, her voice weak but steady. Broken leg, possibly internal, massive support beam across my chest. I need external leverage, Sergeant. Can you stabilize the crossload? She was reporting objective data, not pleading for rescue. Leo immediately understood the calculus of the situation. He could not move the beam alone. Attempting to force it would guarantee a secondary collapse, killing them both. He needed to be creative, utilizing the wreckage itself as a tool. He scanned the internal space, looking for a strong point for a brace.
He found a heavy-duty hydraulic jack inside the medic's emergency supply bag, which was miraculously intact. The jack was small, designed for light vehicles, but it was their only option. He ran the risk assessment in milliseconds. Use the jack or leave her. The mission was absolute. He began the slow, delicate process of setting the jack, finding a stable purchase point on the uneven, fractured concrete.
His hands, trembling from fatigue, had to operate with the precision of a surgeon. He slowed his breathing, using the controlled rhythm to steady his core, transferring his mental discipline into his physical execution. Every single pump of the jack was a monumental effort, taxing his entire body. The load was immense, and the sound of the concrete groaning under the pressure was terrifying. He focused on the tiny, precise arc of the lever, his world narrowing to the act of lifting, lifting, lifting. He felt a sharp, tearing pull in his lower back, a clear, definite injury, a failure of his physical form. He ignored the paralyzing signal, forcing his hand to continue the pumping action. He had already accepted the failure of his body. His only concern was the success of the extraction. He managed to raise the beam a crucial 4 inches, enough for the medic to pull herself free. Dr. Chen, maintaining her own composure, executed the movement with practiced care, crawling out of the space and into the clear. Leo immediately released the jack, the concrete beam crashing back down with a terrifying finality. They had made it out, but they were now exposed and exhausted. Leo, despite the searing pain in his back, moved to the firing position, providing cover while the medic checked her own wounds.
The extraction now required movement. Dr. Chen, with her broken leg, was unable to walk. Leo had to carry her. He used the medic's strong, light webbing to create an improvised harness, securing her to his back. The added weight, combined with his strained back and utter exhaustion, was an almost unbearable burden. He felt the cold shock of defeat wash over him, the realization that he physically might not be able to carry both the load and the mission. This was the true test, the moment when the will fought the undeniable truth of physical collapse.
He began the outward journey, moving with a staggering, agonizing limp, forcing his entire body to move as a single, unstable unit. He focused on the simple mechanics: lift the foot, transfer the weight, step forward. He used the rhythm of the medic's labored breathing on his back as a counter-rhythm to the pain. He remembered a drill instructor's voice. The weight is the proof of the commitment. The man who carries the most is the man who truly believes in the mission. The weight was his belief made manifest. He was no longer running for escape, he was marching for principle. They were spotted. A burst of enemy fire erupted from an adjacent building. Leo stumbled but did not fall, immediately dropping to his knee and returning fire, using the noise and shock to cover their new position behind a damaged APC. He had to fight the battle while carrying the load. He secured the medic, instructing her to maintain a low profile, and fought the engagement with minimal, targeted fire, conserving his ammunition, waiting for the enemy to exhaust their advance. He was a disciplined fire support system, protecting the high-value asset he carried. He utilized his last smoke grenade, using the thick, obscuring white cloud to cover the final, critical push across the main thoroughfare. He moved through the smoke with blurred, frantic speed, running on the final, desperate reserves of pure adrenaline and will. The pain in his back was now so severe it registered as a cold, paralyzing shock, but he refused to acknowledge the pain's authority. He was not a man, he was a machine of extraction, carrying the human cost of the mission on his broken frame. He burst through the smoke, stumbling into the designated rally point. The extraction vehicle arrived, its crew immediately taking the medic. Leo, finally free of the physical burden, did not collapse. He stood, his body trembling violently, but his posture rigid, maintaining the discipline of his bearing. He gave his report, clear, concise, and devoid of personal detail. He had carried the weight, breached the ruin, and fulfilled the mandate. Only when the report was done, the medic secured, and his duty discharged, did he allow himself to slowly sink to the ground, his back against the cold metal of the APC. Exhausted, broken, but wholly intact in his professional honor. The calculus of control had been successfully executed.